Welcome to the Green Room, where we explore the environmental topics that green up our world. Today we have a truly beautiful topic, Lepidoptera, otherwise known as butterflies and moths. Our guest is butterfly advocate and author Brenda Dziedzic of Westland, Michigan. Brenda, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Well, we could spend the whole show talking about what you have done to help butterflies, which has been truly amazing in the short amount of time you've been working on it. But I do want to make sure that people know about your book, which is called Learn About Butterflies in the Garden. And it's got amazing pictures, which you took yourself, right?
Almost all of them.
And wonderful resource for plants that butterflies need, our native Michigan butterflies.
Absolutely.
And also you started the Southeast, I guess you were the co-founder of the Southeast Michigan Butterfly Association?
Yes.
And what's that website?
It's www.sembabutterfly.com.
Okay, great. And you started a website called, what is that?
Butterfliesinthegarden.com.
Okay, which is very useful. And amazingly, last year you actually started a whole greenhouse that is filled with native Michigan butterflies and the plants that they need. And what's the nursery that's located at?
It's at Barson's Greenhouse in Westland on Merriman Road.
Okay, great. And what's the price for going there?
I only ask for donations.
Okay. I did notice on your website, though, that you have this really neat idea about pavers, stepping stones that can be engraved in memory of someone who's passed away, or...
Yes. To help take care of the cost of the maintenance, I am selling pavers for $50 each, and people can have them engraved and put into the walkway of the butterfly house.
That's a great idea. So we're going to show a 6.5-minute movie that talks about your house, what you've done in your yard, and all the different little amazing butterflies that you have there. So we'll show that now. Since European settlers arrived in southeast Michigan, almost every square inch of land has been converted from its natural state and is now a virtual food desert for our native butterflies. Without the native plants they depend on, their numbers have dwindled. A lady in Westland, Michigan is doing something about it. In just 10 years, she's transformed her tiny yard into a Shangri-La for butterflies, and it's making a difference.
In this neighborhood, occasionally we'd see a cabbage white, and now in my little backyard, I lost track, but I have over 30 different kinds of butterflies that come to my yard, and now the whole neighborhood is seeing such a diversity of butterflies. You know, it's just amazing.
How did she do it? The answer is host plants. We've all seen butterflies sipping on nectar flowers, but without the specific plants they need to feed their larvae, the butterflies are unable to reproduce. Here's a few of the many host plants she raises because native butterflies and moths can't live without them.
This here's a spice bush, and it's another host plant for the spice bush swallowtails. It's false nettle, so you can rub your hands on it and not get stung like with the stinging nettle. Rue's a host plant for black swallowtails and giant swallowtails. Showy tick trifoil, and the eastern tail blues lay their eggs on it. This is pearly everlasting, and it's a host plant for the American ladies. There's a lot of different species that lay on willows, so I keep the different willows in pots for them to lay their eggs on. I also have hackberry. There's quite a few species that lay on hackberry. The prickly ash is a host plant for the giant swallowtail. And over there I have the tulip tree, and the eastern tiger swallowtail, it lays its eggs on this.
Brenda's rule of thumb is go native.
Because that's what the species evolved on, and you start giving them something that's been genetically altered, and like with the pink turtle head, it's poisonous to the caterpillars, so they'll die.
When asked what her main message is for others, Brenda replies,
No pesticides. That's the biggest thing, is no pesticides. People just want to spray and kill every insect they see on their plants. And I tell them, you know, if you plant native plants, they're going to attract the beneficial insects, and they'll do the fighting for you.
In addition to creating a beautiful and bountiful safe haven for Lepidoptera in her yard, she also raises them in her kitchen and gives away the eggs to others to raise. Here's a whirlwind tour of some of her babies.
And these are the spicebush swallowtails, and when they're little, they're brown. As they get bigger and shed their skin, then they turn green. This is his protection from predators. They think it's a tree snake, so they won't eat him. And right before they make their chrysalis, they turn yellow. The chrysalis can either be green or this brownish color. There's 2 chrysalises there. And here, these are Eastern tiger swallowtails. When they're little, they're brown with a beige saddle, and as they shed their skin, then they'll end up looking like this. And see, they also have the little false eye spots. This here is Virginia snakeroot. The pipevine swallowtails lay their eggs on this. Pipevine swallowtails. These are my question marks.
It's a very active chrysalis.
Yeah, it doesn't want it to start eating on it, so it's trying to scare the caterpillar away. And these are giant swallowtails. This is North America's largest butterfly, can have a wingspan of 6 inches. Oh, that one has his osmeterium out. When they think there's danger, they stick out their osmeterium and it puts out a foul scent to scare away a predator. And these are black swallowtails. That one just shed its skin, it's behind it, and its face mask is right here. It hasn't dropped yet. It makes a silk pad at its abdomen end down here and attaches first. And then it takes a spinneret and it makes several strands of silk, and once it has its little sling there, it ducks its head underneath and leans back in it before it sheds its skin to reveal the chrysalis.
How long ago?
I don't know, it wasn't out when I was just in here.
Oh my gosh.
So it came out since we've been talking.
Cool.
So its wings are still floppy. This is a giant silk moth, and it's a cecropia, and it will spin a cocoon and then pupate within that, and it will come out the very end of May or sometime like the middle of June next year. This is a hummingbird clearwing. When it's a moth, it looks like a baby hummingbird. This is a naked pupa. It doesn't have the cocoon around it. These are my monarchs. That little guy's maybe 4 days old. This one here is about full grown. Pretty soon it will crawl up to the top and make a silk pad, and then it will make its chrysalis. And right before it comes out, it will turn transparent, and you'll actually be able to see the monarch in it.
How does she feel about all this work?
To raising butterflies?
For the first time, Brenda is at a loss for words.
I find it very easy.
In fact, Brenda collaborated with a local nursery to build a greenhouse where plants that support native butterflies are sold. Within the greenhouse, Brenda has native plants and butterflies in all stages of their life cycle, and she's happy to share her joy about butterflies with all who visit.
Down in Mexico, there's just millions, and their wings sound like leaves rustling in the wind because there's so many of them. It's just so awesome.
Like butterflies, our time on Earth is transitory, but Brenda's work has spread to the multitudes she's inspired and will far outlive her. So that was amazing footage at the end with the butterflies in Mexico, and you took that, right?
Yes.
So how many times have you been there?
I've been to Mexico twice.
Must have been amazing.
Oh, it is. It's just overwhelming.
So apparently there's a problem with the monarchs this year. What's that all about?
Well, this year we're receiving our lowest numbers ever.
Whoa.
Only 1.19 hectares of monarchs, and that's equivalent to about 2 football fields. So the numbers are drastically down. Before, it had been caused from illegal logging, but now a lot is due to loss of habitat in North America.
Let's talk about the logging, because I have read that it's 60% less than last year, I guess, in terms of the numbers of butterflies, and that's the lowest ever recorded. Now, why is it that the butterflies go to this one particular area in Mexico?
Well, on the volcanic mountain range, it's the right amount of moisture, right temperatures, so all the factors together make it a very hospitable place for the monarchs to overwinter. There had been a lot of illegal logging, but the government and a lot of the local citizens and environmental groups down there have really got most of that under control, and they're really stopping the illegal logging. So that so much isn't an issue now as it was even last year.
Mm-hmm. I guess the Mexican government benefits from the tourism, so it's in their interest to protect that area.
And that's why they're doing it.
Yeah. And the butterflies apparently can't go to other forests, right? They're so specifically adapted that once those trees are down, you were telling me something about they're very huge old growth trees and they need the big ones. Why do they need the big ones?
Well, the larger the tree's trunks act like a hot water bottle, and so when the monarchs are gathered on there, it actually provides warmth for them. So the smaller the tree, they're not able to warm up like they can on the bigger trees. And of course, when logging people come in, they want the big trees for, a lot of wood.
Oh. Well, and then you mentioned that now the problem is more in North America. What's going on in North America?
Well, with all the genetically altered crops, the GMOs that are in the soybean, in the corn seeds, and it makes what they're doing is putting like a Roundup in.
Roundup Ready?
Well, they put this chemical in these seeds that prevent Roundup from destroying the crops of the soybean and the corn.
Okay.
So the farmers, they can plant these seeds that have these GMOs in them, and then they can just take this Roundup and just spray heavy amounts all over the place, and it won't kill their soybean crops or their corn crops, but it kills all the other plants around, which is wiping out tons and tons of our milkweed, which is so essential for the monarchs because that's the only host plant that they lay their eggs on.
They're so specifically adapted.
Yes.
That's really a shame. And I read that like 97% of our soybeans are GMO, so it's a huge area. And why are we increasing the number of soybeans and corn out in that area?
Well, they want to use it for fuel.
Biofuels.
Yes.
Yeah. Which we thought was an environmental plus, but it's turning out to have repercussions that we hadn't anticipated.
That's true.
So what can we do in, for instance, areas that are not cornfields or soybean fields? Can we do it in our own yards, help out with the milkweed situation?
Oh, absolutely. Anyone that plants even one plant of milkweed is helping the monarchs. If we can all, spread the word and people plant milkweed in their yard, and it doesn't have to be the common milkweed that you see on the side of the road because that does have underground stems and will pop up, but you can put lovely swamp milkweed in your yard, which sounds like it's a weed, but it isn't, and it doesn't need moist conditions either, even though it says swamp milkweed. So by everyone planting the different milkweeds in their yards that are not invasive, they can have lovely plants and also provide habitat for the monarchs.
And the bees like them too.
Oh, absolutely.
So help all the pollinators.
Yes, all insecta love the flowers on the milkweed.
And also along roadsides and maybe on the edges in parks and different areas, do you think there are things we can do to encourage milkweed in those areas?
Well, yes, I think they could eliminate a lot of the mowing and let a lot of our native plants come up. That wouldn't only just help the monarchs and other butterflies, but all of our pollinators also. And if they were going to mow the plants, at least wait until the monarchs have migrated down to Mexico, because there could be caterpillars or eggs on there, and they're also eliminating their nectar source that they need to migrate down to Mexico.
So what would you think would be a safe time of year to mow along roadsides and parks and such?
I would say anytime after mid-September.
And then what about, you said something about mid-May.
Oh, okay. For people that have their gardens
Uh-huh.
and they've got host plants in their yard,
Oh, yeah.
well, actually, they would host plants for the butterflies, but other insecta also use them. A lot of your species overwinter either as an egg, caterpillar, chrysalis, or an adult, and they may do it right on your old plant material. So if you clean up your yard in the fall or even early in the spring, you're throwing away all of these species. So I always recommend that people don't cut down their plants until May. I just break mine into small pieces, drop them back down to the ground, and they provide more mulch, and dead plant material is an excellent source of nitrogen for your soil anyhow. And that way you're not eliminating the species.
What about, like, for instance, once I pulled up a Queen Anne's lace, and as I was pulling it out of the ground, I saw a beautiful caterpillar, which is one of the swallowtails. I can't remember which one it was.
Yeah, the black swallowtail.
And I was so upset. I replanted it. Do you think it needed the live plant in order to keep eating and reproducing? I mean, going through its chrysalis and everything?
Well, it depends on its size. If it was almost ready to make its chrysalis, then it could eat that plant after you pulled it up. But if it was maybe even, if it was in a smaller state, in a smaller instar, which are stages of growth, then you would need a live plant because they don't want to eat something that's all dried and shriveled up.
Yeah. So I guess being more tolerant of things that you normally would think of as weeds would be advantageous for the butterflies. Like,
Yes.
Since I did that, I'm now leaving the Queen Anne's lace in because I'd love to have swallowtails in my yard. And another thing I've noticed is that if you put something, like I had an area on the edge of my yard that I wanted to let grow into these kind of more native plants that some people think look a little weedy. So I put a fence along that whole area, and it really served to make it look like it was kept
Intentional.
Yes, exactly. And which reminds me, the whole thing about signage. A lot of people advocate putting signs up near your areas where it looks a little less manicured. This one's from your SEMBA, Southeast Michigan Butterfly Association. What are some other places people can get signage for butterfly gardens?
Well, from Monarch Watch, they also provide Monarch Way Station signs. And NABA, which is North American Butterfly Association, they also provide habitat signs.
Great. And talking about tolerance, being more tolerant of things like insect damage, I want to tell a story. I had gone to a native plant nursery, brought home some plants, put them in the ground, and the next day I saw holes in the leaves. And I was celebrating. I was so happy because I had recently learned about how important insects are for the rest of the ecosystem. And I thought to myself, wow, that's an amazing paradigm shift in my head, because a few years ago I would have gone to the store and gotten pesticides to kill the insects. And somebody told me that those holes are called signs of insect foraging, which I love the way it's a positive instead of insect damage. So can you tell us why insects are so important for the rest of the ecosystem?
Well, insects are just one piece of the big puzzle of our ecosystem. And once you start pulling out pieces of that puzzle, the whole thing can collapse. As far, an example, butterflies or moths. Okay, the eggs are eaten by many other insecta. Caterpillars are eaten by other insects, by mammals. And the majority of our songbirds, even if they're seed eaters when they're full, when they're adults, their young babies have to eat worms and caterpillars. So if we're to eliminate the plants for our butterflies, we would be eliminating a lot of our songbirds. We would lose them because they provide so much food for their babies. So not only are butterflies and moths food for other insects, mammals, and birds, they're also pollinators too, so they really do play an important part in our ecosystem.
Yeah, a lot of people say, oh, well, you know, extinctions have been going on throughout history, why should we care? But, I mean, these butterflies are not only gorgeous, but they're important to the entire ecosystem.
And there's some butterflies that are pollinators just to specific plants. So if you were to lose that butterfly, that plant would no longer be pollinated.
Oh, really? Wow. That's amazing. And in the movie, I was unable to keep this clip in, but I wanted to bring it up. You had told me about a time you had gone to a nursery and planted a plant, and the butterfly came the next day and was laying eggs on it. And so you were talking about the ability of these butterflies to smell?
Yes.
And go ahead.
Yes. Well, I'm like a little island in my neighborhood. Everyone has manicured lawns and shrubs, and I have all these different host plants. And each time when I get a host plant, all I ever used to see is cabbage whites, which are a white butterfly, which most people see. When I'd start planting a plant, within a couple days, here would come a butterfly. They smell them from miles away, and they'll come and lay eggs on that plant. So I literally have over 30 different species of butterflies now that come to my yard now, and I have no idea how many kind of moths. But I just, you know, the little plant that you were talking about was Baptisia tinctoria, and I planted it. It was probably maybe 6 to 8 inches tall, and I'd never seen a wild indigo dusky wing in the yard before. And I looked out there, and here there was one laying on it, and I just finished planting it the day before.
That's wonderful. So fulfilling. Now, what can we do to help in terms of citizen science? This Journey North is very interesting. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, Journey North provides information about lots of different species. It provides information about the monarchs, and it will give citizens can post when they first see eggs, caterpillars, the adult monarchs. They can also post when they see their first milkweed coming up. So it really helps the scientists to determine what's going on in different regions of North America.
And another thing we can do is, you know, as we've been mentioning in the movie and in the conversation, is plant the plants. Now, one butterfly that won't come just because we plant the plant is the Karner blue. I guess it's tell us about what plants they need and why it won't work.
Okay, well,
unfortunately.
Yeah, the Karner blue only will lay its eggs on wild lupin, and they need to be in an oak savanna. And these butterflies only travel a short distance, and usually from corridor to corridor within the oak savanna. So even though I have the wild lupin at my house, I would never get the Karner blue, because there's just a few areas which that butterfly is federally endangered, so there's programs to reestablish the habitat where the species were before, and like down in Petersburg State Game Area, they've got a project there that they're introducing the Karner blues back to that area.
Such a shame, they're so beautiful. And what about climate change? What effects is that having?
Well, climate change is shifting what butterflies we see in our area. I've had a couple new ones in my area, and then some that normally were in our area are now moving further north, so we're losing those species. Also with climate change, the drastic amounts of drought that we're having in areas reduce and almost completely wipe out any nectar sources for the butterflies or the host plants. So climate change is really doing a lot of different things to our environment and for the insects too.
Which is a kind of an overwhelming thought, but the fact that we can do so much in our yards is very inspiring. I mean, what you've done is amazing, but not everybody needs to go as far as you have. Just like you said, a plant or two, and even if you live in an apartment, to put something out on your balcony in a pot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you want black swallowtails, you know, you can go ahead and plant you some golden Alexander and put it in a pot. You know, you want some monarchs, just get a pot. I have a lot of trees that are in pots in my yard, you know, so, just for, so I get a bigger diversity of butterflies and moths that come and lay their eggs.
Yeah, which is an amazing solution to the problem. You know, most people say, well, I can't plant, you know, those trees. I don't have the space, and you've proved them wrong. It's great. In fact, don't you move them behind your shed in the winter to protect them a little? You do have to do a little bit of...
Yeah, you can either put them in your garage, but I have a privacy fence behind my garage, so I get my dolly and I move them behind the garage and put the pots all next to each other, and then I pack mulch in between and over the top of them, and that way their roots are protected from the wind, and when it rains or snows, they're still getting moisture. So soon I'll be moving them back to their spots because they are starting to bud out now. And when they start looking like they're getting stressed, I'll just take them out of the pot and I'll chop off like a third of the roots and remove some of the soil and repack them. And they seem to do lovely. A lot of your willows, you just whack them right down to hardly anything, and they'll just bush out looking real beautiful again. So. And
then there's some shrubs that you don't have to plant trees, like, well, why don't you tell me what shrubs? I can't.
Well,
prickly ash, that's the one I was trying to think of.
Well, that one I have in a pot because it does spread. So I have that in a pot, but my shrubs that I have, like for my hummingbird clearwing, it's a little moth that looks like a baby hummingbird, my arrowwood viburnum. Or for the spice bush swallowtail, I have the spice bush, you know, so.
Those are great.
Yeah.
All right, well, it sounds like we need to wrap up, but I want to tell people about your Facebook page. How can they find that?
Okay, if they go to Facebook and look up Brenda's Butterfly Habitat, that has all sorts of information about butterflies and moths that I'm sure people will find very interesting.
And they can find out more about your book there and everything. Great. Well, thank you so much for being here today. This has been really interesting.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yep. For links relating to today's show, check out our webpage at ewashington.org/greenroom. Thanks for joining us here in the Green Room.